Hello, listeners. This is Jarrett Green from Irrational Passions, and I'm here with Michael Zack. Hi, Mike.
Hey, how's it going, man?
I'm good. Thanks for coming by today.
Yeah, sure, it's my
This is
pleasure.
a this is a ramblet, and with this little mini show, I like to look around the internet for other writers who are writing things that are really interesting to me and things that I think are worth talking about. And you, Mike, happen to have written something that not only do I want to talk about, but the rest of the internet would like to talk about. Mostly to tell you how wrong you are.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I'm entitled to mine.
Um, the article is the real reason Nintendo's in trouble.
Yep.
Um,
I can start.
I could summarize it, but I think it'd be best you tell the listeners where you're getting at with this article.
All right, I'll try summarizing it the best I can. First, you have to try looking at Nintendo as a business. The problem a lot of people have with my article is that they're looking at it from a gamer's perspective rather than from a businessman's perspective. What I'm saying is Nintendo stopped marketing to their target audience. Their target audience used to be hardcore gamers, the ones who were in love with Mario, in love with Zelda, in love with the rest of them. They made this change around the development of the Nintendo Wii. At this time, they looked only entirely in-house for the design of the system, not bothering to ask the gaming population or anyone else for any feedback. They also decided to change their marketing plan itself completely, no longer advertising towards the gaming community, rather than advertising towards the community at large. Literally not having a target market. This is almost unheard of in any industry at all. Every company has a specific target market in order to market their goods. And so because they abandoned their target market to go for a wider audience, it's caused a lot of difficulties for them among the gaming community, which you can see more clearly at the Wii U because, let's face it, no one was waiting in line for the Wii U's launch. There isn't any exactly a giant demand for Wii U games at all. The same strategy which worked for them for the Wii just can't really be successfully duplicated because it's kind of a hit or miss when you don't have a target market. And so to me, this is the real reason why Nintendo is in trouble.
What's interesting about the Wii U is when you directly compare it to the Wii, how polar opposites they really are as far as their launch and their reception. When the Wii launched, do you think we'd ever be having a conversation about how poorly Nintendo's doing?
That's actually hard to say because I had suspicions, even all the way back then, that Nintendo abandoned their target markets. I mean, I actually got into a heated debates with friends of mine, which turned into shouting matches. But I always kind of thought that Nintendo would be able to still reach out to the people which they need to in order to sell their games. But lo and behold, they're just having too much trouble with it.
I
It's just
think
weird.
it's weird. The Wii U is weird, and the Wii was weird. The Wii was not the game when the GameCube launched and the GameCube's hype train happened when it was just the Dolphin and people didn't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People didn't know what to think about it, but they knew it was a game system. They knew it was a game console. They knew that they'd get a Zelda, they'd get a Mario, they'd get Donkey Kong, and they get them all pretty quickly. And they knew that that would be the console to go to play those games. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the market that that was the flag Nintendo was waving about
Mm-hmm.
it. Like, come here to play those games. And then the Wii was the exact opposite. Uh, Come here, bring your family here to play a whole different set of games that they'll love.
The Wii's design was just phenomenal. In all my articles that I wrote to do with this, I always posted the where I got the information from.
Hmm.
The Wii was designed entirely in-house. The people at Nintendo, they went to almost everyone in their company and talked with them and said, "Hey, what do you want? What do you want in the system? What do you want in the system?" And so the Wii was a system designed entirely by pretty much everyone at Nintendo. The Wii U, in contrast, was only designed by a very small handful of people, just engineers, and they were trying to figure out what they wanted and what they thought would be really useful or neat to have. So, I mean, the designs of the system is just night and day between the Wii and the Wii U, or even the Wii and just any other system they have in the past. It's it's just mind blowing to me.
Do you think that that sort of philosophy was really the success of the Wii? The inclusiveness, I guess?
Well, I suspect that there was a sense of inclusiveness because there was a lot of minds coming together with the Wii. I mean, I still have problems with them not ever reaching out towards the gaming community, ever just even doing one simple survey to gamers saying, hey, what do you want? But I think they maybe lucked out with the Wii because they had so many people involved with it. Unlike with the Wii U, when there was only like maybe 5 or 6 people at most involved with the designing.
When people, anyone writes an article like this, anywhere, and you put it pretty much on any site you want, there's always going to be a cadre of Nintendo fans who love their product and don't like the idea of the company being besmirched, really in any way. And these people will argue till they're blue in the face about just how good everything Nintendo does is and just how much better it is than anything else. But how come this sort of fervor doesn't translate into really mind-blowing successful software and hardware sales?
I think the fans of Nintendo, the really hardcore fans of Nintendo, appreciate the games that Nintendo makes. Because, let's face it, Nintendo really does make high-quality, very well-polished games. I think everyone on all sides of the spectrum can agree with that. The problem is Nintendo abandoned their target market, the hardcore market. My friends who are hardcore Nintendo fans, they haven't even bothered purchasing the Wii U. There's just nothing there for them. There's nothing to really attract them. The third-party games aren't there. I mean, I don't even think there's any really second-party games there to speak of at all. I mean, at best right now, Nintendo came out with, what is it, Donkey Kong? They're going to be having a few more games coming out in the coming months, which is part of their strategy for attracting third-party games. Strange. I'm not sure exactly how that'll work, but
yeah, I don't understand that marketing brilliance, but
hey, it's exactly. I don't get it either. But the president of Nintendo was very clear that for like once a month or once every 2 months, they're going to be trying to launch a high-quality first-party game along third-party releases in order to attempt to encourage people to purchase more. But I don't know how that's going to work. But
I don't think that's how that works. I think they choose the better game all the time. Especially, you can't assume that people don't have finite resources, and since your really good first-party game is next to a pretty good third-party game, they're going to buy both. Yeah. That's not how that works.
My best guess, I mean, this is just a guess, is that they believe people are on the fence with buying the Wii U. And maybe this first-party game will get them to want to buy it. And if you buy one game, of course you're going to want to buy another game. But that's like a shot in the dark and a huge gamble. I hope it works for them.
Yes,
I really do.
Gamble.
Like another thing which kind of gets me with...
Like you said...
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You started.
Well, I was about to say that what gets me about just the horrible reaction that people are having just to the thought that Nintendo is in trouble is that they think that I hate Nintendo or I just want to see Nintendo fail, which is hardly the case. I really do think Nintendo is in trouble, and I'm actually a pretty big Nintendo fan. I've been a Nintendo fan since 1988, 1989, and I have nothing but great memories with them all the way through the Nintendo 64. So it's like I just want to see Nintendo going back to a time when they were reaching out to the gaming community, marketing, making advertising specifically for gamers, and just trying to figure out exactly what it is gamers want.
And I think that's the strange part. Any educated naysayer about Nintendo almost always can say they love Nintendo. I love Nintendo now. I think Nintendo does great work now. I literally just got done playing a hardcore session of Bravely Default on my 2DS that I bought recently because the DS line has always been 100% spot on, and almost every time something comes out, every year I can always look at the 3DS or even the original DS and know that they're doing it right there. Which is
Yeah.
why it's so strange to watch the Wii U and how it's the complete opposite. What the hell happened to the Wii U?
That's that's one of the questions of the ages right there. I've seen people just speculate that it was just they had really weak launch, that there wasn't really any games there to begin with. Some people talked about the strange controllers, which, hell, if you look at just their actual controller, there's a giant picture in there. It doesn't even feel like or have the look of a controller. I look at the Wii U and I don't even see a game system because it does not have the look or feel of a video game system to me. I'm not even sure. When I look at it, I couldn't tell you what it is. But that's just how I see it. But I would credit that back to its design and how it was designed completely 100% in-house and away from the gaming community.
And I guess the Wii had a very fervent following of the same Nintendo fans who had been following it throughout.
Yeah.
But it feels like the Wii U lost a lot of that following. And is the Wii U just the example of what you were saying, the culmination of them losing their audience?
Yeah. Or just, if you want another example, there was another company that made exactly the same mistake. Look at Microsoft with the initial launch or the introduction of the Xbox One. The Xbox One, no matter what you have to say about it, it's a great system. It has a lot of power. It has a lot of really cool features. Yeah, the Kinect is always on. It could be a problem, but I love the idea that you can just say, "Hey, Xbox, turn on," and it'll turn on. I think that's pretty cool.
It's just on, waiting for you.
Yeah, but the problem is the way they marketed it. It felt like it was creepy and always watching you, and they were talking to the dude bro audience. They're hardcore gamers.
Yes.
They're gamers. They're not dude bros. They're the people who are playing, who will play the Call of Duties and what else is that? The Battlefield, I think, is for the EA. They're not the people who will sit back and watch basketball games 24/7. They're not the people who will want to use Skype at the same time. But the problem is that's what they were marketing, and it ultimately fell flat on their face because their marketing team did not address their own target market, and so then you had people rising up pretty much in revolt, and their sales have still been struggling, even though they're a perfectly fine system. They're still pretty much the same company. It's still a video game system, but because their marketing just dropped the ball, it just stopped working for them.
I always use the example of the PS3 when I make parody to these arguments. The PS2 is the most successful video game system ever made.
Agreed.
It has some of the best games ever made for it, and has some of the most games ever made for it. The highest sales and units of PS3s have been moved on this planet, more than any other console. And the PS3, when it came out, was a complete disaster. I bought the PS3 at launch because I was like, it's Sony, they got this. I spent $650 on that thing.
Jesus.
Waited in line with two other people because no one cared. Because the entire hype train up to the launch was Sony knowing that they were really good at the PS2. And they had lost their target market completely. All their PS3 advertisements were avant-garde and crazy because they were trying to market about how elegant their system was and how it's more adult. But those people don't care about how adult it is. I didn't care about how shiny it looks on my TV set. I don't care. The baby with the telekinesis blowing things up in the commercial, that's not doing anything for me. That doesn't speak to me. It spoke to no one.
Yep. That's
the Wii U is doing the same thing. It's speaking to no one.
That is very true. It's a real problem to do when you're thinking about why, if it's even possible for Nintendo to be in trouble. You can't look at them as a gamer. You have to take a look at it, take a step back, and take a look at them as a company itself trying to sell a product. And can they sell this product? Can they reach the market that they need to? I really, really hope they can, but it requires them to take a step back. And as I put in a different article, just ask the gaming community, hey, what do you want? Then after that, go to the third-party companies. Take surveys. Ask them, hey, what do you want in a game? What can we do to make your life easier or to make it easier for you to program games for us? Just very simple things to have a good starting point to open themselves up.
I think
But
the scariest part is like you have to go to the community to really understand what the community wants from you. And the problem is there are sects of this community that don't think anything's wrong, and that's not going to help anyone. It's impossible for anyone to look at Nintendo's financials and think they're okay. Just
yeah,
because they have assets and just because they made a profit last year or made a profit the year before doesn't necessarily mean they're not in trouble. Because remember, unlike their competitors, Microsoft and Sony, the only market they're in is games. So if their games market, their games division does nothing, then they are failing. And when half of their games market is the Wii U, and that's failing, when the Wii U is selling worse than the Sega Saturn, is being outpaced by the Sega Saturn in its lifetime, your system is doing worse. It doesn't matter if the Wii before it had or sold more copies of their core titles. It doesn't matter because they're not selling on the Wii U. Now, the Wii U did have a really good last couple weeks, outsold the PS4 in Japan, and that's probably part and parcel to the fact that A, there's not a whole lot to play on the PS4 in Japan, and B, there's more to play on the Wii U, and the Wii U is also cheaper in Japan now. But the idea that the sales figures of the Wii U are strong enough for everyone to look at Nintendo and think there's nothing to worry about is an absolute fallacy. And how does a company who needs to go to their fans and to go to their people, their consumer base and their target market, who has to ask them for advice when their target market and people give them that advice saying you're doing perfectly fine? How does a business trying to be receptive learn anything from this?
that's one hell of a good question. I mean, there's ways for taking surveys in order just to get to ask a broad enough market itself, but outside of that, it's just really hard to say. I mean, they could take a look to see what games are selling in other systems, what games aren't selling in other systems, and try to adapt their strategies. But I don't know if you had a chance to take a look through Nintendo's investors page, because whenever they release any annual reports, it's just full of nostalgia. Always looking back to the past. Always talking about, oh, you grew up with this game, you grew up with that game, you grew up with that game. It seems like a lot of their strategy, just trying to attract people or just trying to keep people's interest, just deals with these ideas of nostalgia. They try reminding people, you loved Mario back then, you'll love it now. You love Zelda back then, you love it now.
You should still love it.
Yeah, it seems like that is kind of like what they're trying to do with trying to figure out how to reach these people or figure out what people want, is just take a look at what people used to want.
Right.
So,
unbeknownst to internet trolls who argue with me on the internet, I am a business major. I spent a lot of my auditing exercises auditing the games business, the games industry. The Nintendo was one of them. I've looked extensively through Nintendo's earnings documents in 2012, right when the Wii U was there. And I've looked through THQ's, looked through Sony's, looked through Microsoft's. It's important to understand, when people just really, I guess, when it comes down to it, the small vocal minority that I guess we get caught up with trying to prove something to just really don't want the whole story. They really don't want the facts. They like the nostalgia, and Nintendo knows they like the nostalgia, so they're going to write to them. But what happens when that's not good enough?
I honestly don't know. Or I think it was in 2012 or 2011 when they took a giant loss. And they were trying to explain to their own investors why they took the loss. And they were just pointing to hey, our sales were the same as a different year or whatever. And they were blaming just the entire financial situation, or the market crash of 2008, which caused a weaker dollar versus the Japanese yen. And so when I'm taking a look at even how they justify when they take a loss, they don't even consider that it could be bad sales or that they're not really reaching the right people. So it just amazed me that they themselves aren't taking their own losses. I don't want to say seriously, because they definitely are taking it seriously, but they seem to be more rationalizing it rather than considering other possibilities.
What has to happen before Nintendo really starts to cave and does things that not just their fans demand, because they might not demand, but the industry demands? Like, what happens? What has to happen before Nintendo gets really solid third-party support, or becomes a console with really online or robust online multiplayer options and bells and whistles, or has a console with a control scheme that's easy to understand, or has a console that can do the entertainment system sort of thing. The things that people buy, the things that people are buying, the things that people run out and buy 6 million of in 4 months.
Absolutely realistically, it has to be their investors. Because I think the investors are the only ones that will have an ultimate say on what Nintendo does or doesn't do. And the investors are strongly pushing Nintendo to get into more microtransactions and trying their best to get Nintendo to move on to the mobile market, which the company itself is strongly resisting, but the investors, they're the ones who own the company. And so ultimately, Nintendo will have to answer to them. And they're the only ones they really do have to answer to. And so, in my opinion, any change will have to come through them.
If investors, especially Japanese investors in these big companies, they are just like your Iwatas and Igas, and they all want to be what they've always been.
Well,
They
not
all want to live knowing that their name and their legacy will remain.
well,
I mean, I get in a way. I mean, there are big examples of a lot of Eastern corporations crumbling to normal or more competitive capitalist ideas. Like, for example, Square Enix 2 years, 3 years ago, when he started buying up Western developers because they knew they needed to, because that's what the market does. If you're a big publisher, you get small developers to publish for you instead of having to pump out a game every 4 years and hopefully it makes lots of money. Uh,
mhm.
is Nintendo there yet? Are their investors there yet, where they have to start thinking outside the box again?
Well, I'd first argue that Nintendo's investors are far more multinational than just Japanese. There's a few conglomerates out from Hong Kong which are heavily invested. I remember reading one of the hedge fund managers were like demanding that Nintendo just like releases Super Mario Brothers 1 on the mobile platform, then just charge people like 99 cents to get Mario to jump higher.
Yeah,
And so
I
it's
read that.
yeah, it was just an unbelievable claim, but it just opened my eyes just how many different nationalities and how many groups of people have a strong investment in Nintendo. But that's just like a side point, because it's like I'm not sure if it's just mainly Japanese investors who are involved with them. But what to the point at which Nintendo will be forced to make a change or to try adapting their strategies. Well, there's like many different possibilities. One, if they take not too many losses, hopefully they won't. But if they do, they're going to ultimately be forced to change their strategy, or they will just start dying. But I can't imagine any other scenario outside of investors which would really make them change or want to change. Because Nintendo, they still have really great things going for them. They have the success of the 3DS. Most of their sales for first-party games they're pretty much bestsellers. I think they also own Pokemon, and
They own Freak,
oh,
who
Freak.
does Pokemon. So
Yeah, so they're getting just ungodly amount of royalties just to do with everything to do with Pokemon. So unless the Wii U just crashes and burns and just drags down their profits as they did last year, I can't imagine any scenario where they would realistically want to change unless the investors just force them to. It's kind of weird.
does does Nintendo jump ship on the Wii U and just try a whole new home console to try to cut their losses now, or do they try to make the Wii U something?
There's no indication that they're going to be doing that, at least for the next year. Nintendo's strategy is going to be just focusing specifically on the Wii U. and developing strong first-party games in order to encourage people to purchase them, as well as to support more third-party games. So at least for the foreseeable future, they're going to be putting in all their efforts to do so. And I think most of the management of Nintendo are they're asking for, I think, 6 months to a year in order to give them a chance to turn it around. So we're not going to be seeing any change for at least a year. And hopefully something will change by then, but I'm more or less of a wait-and-see person right now.
And I guess that's the strongest move. And to be fair, the Wii U has a couple of games on the horizon that are exciting to think about. Whether they do well or not is neither here nor there, but they still have that Bayonetta 2 exclusive. It's still exclusive, which is a big shock to me personally. When I saw that at E3 a couple years ago, I thought that's the first game that jumped ship and is not exclusive to the Wii U, and it's still exclusive. And there's no talk about it not being exclusive, and people are really excited about it. It's a platinum game, and the other platinum Wii U exclusives sold moderately well, so there's cachet for it there. There's also Smash Brothers, which is always a system seller for Nintendo. I know a handful of people personally who are going to buy the Wii U when Smash Brothers comes out, and that's it. That's all they want it for. Other than that, though, like, are there really any hot button games that maybe I'm missing that you think will really help the Wii U in their fight?
Mario Kart. Mario Kart, it's almost always a bestseller. And after, I think the Mario Kart Wii is one of the best-selling games of all time. So, I mean, it has to have some sort of momentum going behind it. It's just a title that's recognizable. So I'm almost positive that people will be buying the Wii U specifically for Mario Kart. There may be other games for it, but it's just escaping me. I haven't heard too much about any more Zelda games coming out for the Wii U. I know that they came out for the 3DS. Well, but I just don't think there's too many on the horizon. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed that maybe there's something I'm missing.
Yeah, and they like to space their big core titles, their real core titles, out as I guess hype points in big conferences.
Yeah.
There's always potential, but
they're doing their best to release far more of their older titles on through what is their shopping channel?
The eShop.
Yeah, their eShop. They're releasing a ton of just old school games. Just like the last week, they released Super Mario Bros. 2: The Lost Levels, along with a bunch of other older titles. They're doing everything they can to make their entire library available to people. So, I mean, I shouldn't say that they don't have any titles coming out, since they're really doing their best to just give the Wii U an ungodly large library to pull from.
Which I guess is the other strategy, kind of backdoor with titles already made to try to get the nostalgia play.
Well, I'll admit that when they put out the Super Mario Bros. 2: Lost Levels, that did get my attention. It's one of my all-time favorite games. So they're making interesting moves. Not enough to make me want to buy the Wii U, but it got my interest.
Is there a move the Wii U could pull that would make you want to buy it?
Huh. Right now, no. There's just nothing there which would hold my interest at all. The games I like to play, they're mostly role-playing games, great RPGs. Like, you have Mass Effect, it's a great shooting RPG. I like a lot of the older Final Fantasies. They did have a Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest come out, but that was for the Wii and not the Wii U.
That was for the Wii, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe if they had a Dragon Warrior for the Wii U, I might consider it. But really, whenever I have a chance to play the Wii U, whenever I'm at any conventions like Gen Con, I'm just holding this giant controller and just staring at this touchscreen and just wondering, what the hell am I doing here?
That's the thing. There's a running joke with me and a lot of other people from the site that the system seller for me, because I haven't bought a PS4 or an Xbox One either, because I don't think there's anything compelling on these things that demands my $400 to $500. Mm-hmm. And I don't see anything being compelling for me to go run out and do this. But if the only game I can think of that I would run out and buy a console for, if they announced it today, would be a sequel to Vagrant Story, because I love Vagrant Story. And Vagrant Story 2 would be excellent for me. I would run out and buy a console for that. But if it was an exclusive to the Wii U, I probably still wouldn't buy it, because I don't really want to play that game with the Wii U. I don't like that controller. I don't like the way it feels. I don't like the way it interacts with the screen. I think it's gimmicky. Like, I didn't like the nunchuck either. Whenever I could not play a game with it, I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Me too.
And I consider myself a gamer. I play games and write about them. I like games enough to write about them. So, in all suspect, would be the target market for a Nintendo console with Nintendo games that I love. But even the game I would run out and buy a console for today, if it was on a Wii U, I still wouldn't, because I don't like the console.
Well, again, I would
how do you get
blame
around
just...
that?
I don't know, because the designs for it was done completely in-house, just done between just a small handful of people. This is just one of the things where just like having just like groups of fans who could test their product, or just doing surveys, just asking fans, hey, what would you like? I'm not an engineer, so I don't know if it's possible for them to come out with new series of controllers. I think I heard people just talking about how the Wii U does have like normal controllers to come out with them, but when I think of the Wii U, I will always think of that just giant ungodly controller with that dang screen right in the middle. But I would love to see them just come up with some sort of redesign for their controller, or maybe just have some sort of updates to go along with it to make it... I like that gimmicky. Yeah, to make it less gimmicky and more of just a video game console. But I don't even know how that would work, because I'm not an engineer.
Yeah, and neither do I. I mean, I could soothsay all day, but I know that having to buy a separate controller to make me want to even touch a console seems a bit counterproductive. And this console is perfect for some people, just not enough people. And I think that's really the issue.
What surprised me, like even with the launch, I would have sworn that Arkham City would have sold millions of copies. I was following, because I loved Arkham City for the Xbox 360, but they had a lot of neat little options where you can use the controller like a utility belt. And when I heard that, I'm looking at it just thinking, oh my god, it's gonna pull you in a lot more into the game. This is gonna make you really feel like Batman, because that's what the Arkham Asylum and Arkham City did. It pulled me into the game. But when I follow the sales figures, people just weren't buying it at all. And what they were talking about, just, you can use this utility belt, that was just a gimmick rather than something to make people really want to buy.
It really was. The only thing that wasn't so much a gimmick, because I've played a bit of it. I didn't play through it because I didn't have a Wii U, but I've played a bit of it just for parody. And the non-gimmicky parts were they got added equipment, like a combat equipment. There's like an armored gauntlet thing. It was a new weapon, but the only not gimmicky part of that game was that, and that doesn't involve me putting the weapons on and punching people like I normally was. Everything else was it was easy to do without looking through the screen to fly a remote control batarang. I don't want to do it that way, because this isn't the player agency I'm having a problem with now. And the game itself didn't run as well on this console as it did with the other ones. It definitely didn't look as good, and it came out like 8 months afterwards. A lot of people had already played it and weren't going to buy it again, because that's a long game. There's no need to play it to buy it on your Wii U to play a 30-hour game again, a 30-hour beat 'em up again, especially an inferior version of that beat 'em up.
Yeah, that is very true. Very true. I guess it was just that the way who was that? Rocksteady Games, I think, was the one who produced, or who just distributed the Arkham City. I think it was Rocksteady.
Rocksteady, yeah, Rocksteady.
Yeah, I can't remember who. I can't remember if they were the ones who developed it or distributed it, but
they developed it. WB distributed.
Okay, yeah, because I thought Warner Bros. Their marketing was brilliant. That Nintendo just emphasizing all the new things you can do with the Wii U. I really thought it would have succeeded. But
right, of all the consoles to succeed on, all the extra screen for all these new bells and whistles,
Yeah.
It should have worked. That's the third-party game that should have worked and didn't.
Yeah. But
And Assassin's Creed didn't work. That should have worked too. That didn't.
yeah. As what you said, it could be that the games were just out for too long, and that maybe it's just what the extra screen just is just a gimmick rather than something that really adds to the gameplay. That's just something that's hard to say, because I know I have a difficulty just like looking up at the screen and looking down at the screen on the console back and forth, back and forth. I like keeping my eyes steady on one screen and playing that.
Yeah, it helps.
No,
Seeing what's going on, that helps.
I think with the zombie U or whatever it is, it's just you constantly have to like look back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and I watch my character getting eaten when I'm looking down at the screen, like, okay, where's the zombies? And I look up and I'm dead. I'm thinking, oh god damn it, and just having to go back and again.
It's cumbersome. It should be cool, but it's actually just cumbersome, and there's no way around it. You can tell because all the first-party games have very little functionality with the screen. It's kind of the same thing, any second screen situation. Like, I know Vita has second screen functionality in certain games, and there's no reason to. It's just an app, it's just a thing, it's just kind of a gimmick. If you think it's cool to see, but it's definitely not necessary. And that, unfortunately, was a piece of their product that was built into their console. And there are plenty of people that like it, but 80% of people don't.
It's kind of weird that there's like first-party Mario games that isn't using the screen, because Nintendo builds their consoles to go with their games and their games to go with the consoles. Like the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, and to some extent the GameCube, their controllers and systems were designed around their Mario game. Whatever the biggest Mario launch was going to be, their system, their controllers, everything was designed specifically around that.
Right.
And so it's just weird to hear that the Wii U's controllers isn't using, or the games aren't using the controller to its fullest potential, or just showing it off.
Just not really in a great way. It's becoming the second screen on the DS or the 3DS. It's what in 80% of 3DS games, the second screen is a menu or a map.
Right.
And that's what this screen has become. And it's because the first year everyone wants promise, and the second and third year it's really difficult to do anything with this.
Yeah. I suspect you can probably use the controller as just like a handheld console, maybe, but you already have a 3DS. I still have the Nintendo DS. The games I have on there are just still phenomenal. So, but even with the second screen on that one, I barely even look up at it since I don't really need to see that sub menu.
Right. There's kind of no point, and that's kind of like the message here. That's like the metaphor. There's kind of no point. When you look at the Wii U's controller, that's how you feel about Nintendo. That's how I feel about Nintendo.
Yeah. And all this
could have been so good, and then it's just not.
It could have been all of it if they would have just went to the fans and just found it out. Still, with just simple surveys and just find out what do the fans want before they start designing these consoles, or go to the third-party companies and ask them, hey, what do you want? Like, what kind of new technologies would make your life better? Here are some options that we're trying to develop or considering. Would this work for you? Just little things like that really could have saved them so much headache. But, no, it didn't happen.
No, and it's weird because, not to harp too much on it again, but there's nothing about Nintendo that couldn't work if they just thought smaller. Like, if the Wii U was simply a box with a normal Nintendo controller and still did the same things, it would A, be cheaper, and B, people would, if the same amount of people bought the console and bought the software, but it was cheaper to make, they'd be successful. That's why the Wii U worked, because the Wii U was pretty easy to make. It had motion controls or whatever, but and the bottom line was it wasn't that hard to make. It wasn't that expensive to make. So almost all of the money was profit. That system was making profit immediately.
Wow, that's actually pretty cool.
So it just happened to compound the fact that it sold so well so long. But if that sold the Wii U numbers, they'd still be profiting because the Wii didn't take much effort to build at all. because it was a simple console with a very simple idea.
Well, let me turn this around on you for just a second, because it's really nice to talk to someone who actually has a business background and can look at all this without being just a blind fanboy or just having blind devotion. But what have you noticed about just fans' reactions to the Wii U's difficulties? I mean, do you feel frustrated when you're trying to explain to people and just tell them there is an actual problem here, but this is solvable, but only if like the fans would get together or something along those lines?
It is kind of frustrating because they're the only people that can make it better, but they think it's all right, so they're not going to do anything. And I wonder when I talk to people who are really fervent about Nintendo, why they don't think something's wrong, and B, what have they done to support Nintendo? Like, they're talking to me about the games they love, but that those games are really few and far between because the attach rate on Nintendo consoles aren't super great either. I mean, they are pretty good, especially in comparison to first-party games versus third-party games. Almost all of the games people buy for Nintendo consoles are first-party because that's how it is. And another interesting fact, a lot of shovelware moves like in large number on Nintendo consoles, on the Wii U and on the Wii. Like weird games, like the strange games you see for full price, but like in the back of the shelves at like Toys R Us, that are like about cooking and like painting and collecting stickers or whatever.
Yeah.
Those games sell all the time. That makes Nintendo a lot of money too. But the frustrating part about it all is the people who claim to love Nintendo so much don't seem to know that Nintendo's in trouble because they're not looking at it from a business. They're looking at it from their heart. They love Nintendo, so they can't fail because they are still making the games I love. But their pockets aren't the millions of dollars they need to stay in business. It's the same sort of situation I had. I wrote an article maybe a year ago. It ended up being front page in IGN. It was called "Is Zynga the Next THQ?" The idea of the article was I was comparing Zynga's financial troubles now to and the financial troubles that made THQ into the defunct sort of situation they are now. There are very similar waypoints and red flags to compare them to, and I was comparing them. Zynga and the THQ didn't look for these signs, and it's their decisions that made them fail. And Zynga's not looking at these signs, and it's their decisions that made them fail. People didn't see the business aspect. They saw the fact that I was comparing Zynga to THQ. I was comparing Farmville to like Darksiders. But that wasn't the truth. The truth is, these places are businesses, and people need to spend money to make these businesses stay there. People are spending money on Farmville. They're not spending money on THQ products. And THQ was making very big mistakes internally, and that's how they failed. But the sort of hyper fanboyism kind of gets frustrating because I enjoy passion, and I'm glad people are passionate about games, and especially about Nintendo games, because they are more gaming than most video game companies. They are gaming, and there's no debating. Everyone knows who Mario is. Everyone knows who Nintendo is. They are gaming like MGM is movies, but they also don't seem to understand that passion has to translate into something that a big business that's spending money to make consoles and make these games can actually understand and appreciate. People don't know how to spend with their money anymore. If you love Nintendo,
that's another problem.
Go buy Nintendo stuff. Tell your friends to buy Nintendo stuff. Or don't buy anything, and then they'll make it better next time. But don't think it's okay when it's not.
Yeah, I think another giant problem that Nintendo's having, but this is something that was outside of my original article, is that, or actually this is a problem that all just video game companies are having. The video game developers, the console developers, is that they're in competition with every other just entertainment product out there. Mm-hmm. And like Nintendo's problems they're having difficulty selling, it's far more than them just struggling against the PS4. It's far more than them struggling against Xbox One. They're struggling against the movie industry. They have to be considered to be struggling against something like Netflix. They have to be, because they're competing for people's time.
Right.
And with such a limited time and so many entertainment options that are out there, Nintendo has to do something in order just to try starting gaining some momentum, because they're falling further and further behind every other entertainment product out there. And to me, that's ultimately going to become a problem. I mean, you have some companies like Sony, they're doing phenomenally well right now. I also suspect like Microsoft, the Xbox One, the reason why they launched the way they did as just a general entertainment console was because they realized they're in competition with everything, and so they have to do their best to position themselves in the entertainment industry as a whole. Well, that kind of failed for them because they, ignored their market, which they should have been going for. I understand why they did, but Nintendo, I just don't get it.
And no one does. And like I said, Sony did the same thing 10 years ago. Microsoft is doing something similar right now. And I think Microsoft knows, I think they see what happened to Sony 10 years ago, and they're seeing what's happening to Microsoft now, or Nintendo now, and they're going to turn this around before it becomes another Wii or a PS3. But again, I was just like these people 10 years ago with my PS3, pretending it was okay when it wasn't. It was not okay. It wasn't okay for years, because Nintendo was doing, or Sony was just doing the wrong things. They weren't making games I wanted to play. They weren't trying to make their console something to put in people's houses, especially the people who bought PS2s. Saying, here, buy something that's kind of like a PS2 with not as great games for $400 more is not a marketing strategy. But that was their strategy for 3 years.
Wow. What I actually remember more about the PS3 launch is just how people were insane with that on eBay. Just they purchased and trying to sell it for thousands upon thousands of dollars, and it's just like, why?
Yeah. What? I didn't want it for $600. Why would I want it for $1,600?
Yeah, but those are just memories.
Sony did the same thing, and now they've learned lots of lessons. They're doing the right things now. They're being the fun, sort of odd company that competed with Nintendo years ago, and now they're successful for it. The Xbox 360 was that company, or Microsoft was that company 8 years ago, when they did the same thing.
Like with the PS4s, with their initial debut, they just spoke to the gaming community. I love that when they just said, "Oh, you want to just trade games? Here's how you do it. Just show the commercial, hand a game over to someone."
Yeah.
It was just, they talked to the gaming audience. They weren't paying attention to just the massive media out there, just the gaming audience. And because of that, they had so much favorable press, and it's just not that hard to talk to your friggin' target market, or just to have one.
Right. Yeah. And it's not that hard to look at your financials and know what your target market wants. You know what your target market wants? To be able to play Call of Duty the same way everybody else does. Even if I'm a Nintendo fanboy, I don't like that. I don't like Call of Duty. I think it's a serialized sort of dumbing down of first-person shooters. Even if that's the case, the truth is Nintendo's a business, and Call of Duty make $500 million of revenue yearly. I want to be a part of that. If I'm big business making games, and that's a game, I want to be a part of it. There's no way I can make a console that can't play Grand Theft Auto 5 when it's the best-selling entertainment product ever made. I have to watch that and just be sad.
Wasn't it also the fastest selling on top of that all? I think.
Yeah, like $800 million in a day or something like that.
It broke $1 billion.
And Nintendo got no piece of that.
Yeah, wow.
That's a business flaw. That's a problem.
The executives had to be crying a lot that day. Man.
Yeah. I think that's when everyone looked at the Wii was like, you just can't do it. You can't do these things. You don't have to focus on these things, but you have to be able to do them. And they just can't do it.
Well, as I said before, I sincerely hope the best for Nintendo. I really want to see them turn it around, but they have to start doing something differently. There's no other way around that. But yeah.
I'm glad we agree on that.
Yeah. But how is like the ultimate thing, because realistically, we don't know how the market would react to any changes that they do. Because let's say, for argument's sake, they make a serious change that we think they need to, like the controllers, that they just completely revamp the system. there's a chance people will say, "Oh, look, Nintendo's throwing in the towel. They're just like bending to the will of their whining fans, and it'll only end up being worse for Nintendo because of that." There's just no way to know how people will react, or how the market will react, or how even the gaming media will react to any change. There's just so much that could happen, which is kind of frustrating
but I
for me.
think any of that happening will be better than what's happening now.
I hope so. I sincerely hope so.
But the article is why Nintendo's really in trouble. There's a follow-up article,
Yep.
Saving Nintendo.
Yep.
Find that too. On the same place, in the same site, right?
Yep, it's on the same place, same site. It's called gamersphere.com, GAMERSSPHERE.com. Saving Nintendo. The only thing I do is just go over additional problems, like the problem Nintendo's having, people's protests to do with it. I mean, there was even some people who didn't understand that the investors were the ones who owned the friggin' company. And people who don't understand that, I'm saying Nintendo's in trouble.
It's hard to argue, too.
Yeah. I'm saying Nintendo's in trouble. Why? Because they said they're in trouble. And so it's like, if the company says you're in trouble, who the hell are you to say that they're not when they're the ones who say that they are? And I just went over 4 strategies which they could do. 2 of them I came up with, and 2 of them actually came from Nintendo. Let's see if And so the 2 which I had was just talk to the game community, talk with the developers. Well, Nintendo, they're just doing their best to reach out to more just third-party games by supporting first-party games, as well as developing their own community and just reinforcing their community through the Miiverse, and trying to build more word of mouth and just more interest in their games through the people who already own the systems. Both strategies seem kind of interesting. I hope it works, but I don't know if it will or won't. Well, keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah, we can all. That's what we want to do. Because in truth, we might think Nintendo's in trouble, but we don't want to see them go. It's not malicious. We're concerned about them because we want them to survive. Because you're not going to see Mario any other way. Mm-hmm. Any other console, you're not going to see it the same way if you did. Yeah. The charm about these games comes from Nintendo and only Nintendo, and I never want that to change.
Yeah, I want to see Nintendo products and Nintendo consoles until I'm like 120, 130 years old. I want Nintendo to still be around. I want my kids and grandkids and great-grandkids to have the same experiences with Nintendo consoles. That's all I'd like.
And when the PlayStation 1 came out, I knew that they know, if you follow them through their history, they know how to adapt to the market. And Nintendo used to know how to adapt to the market, and it's failed. They're just not doing it anymore, and that's sad. And that's the point here. It's sad. We don't want this to happen to them. But thanks for coming by, Mike.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Where can they find your work?
Well, first, I'm actually the editor for over at Gamerspheres.com, where I cover Nintendo exclusively, where I go over Nintendo products, look at this news stories to go along with them. I also have another site which I'm the editor for called Press Start to Begin. We're at pressstarttobegin.com. I mean, .org, pressstarttobegin.org. All one word. God, I watch you're going to go to some porn site or something. Yeah, pressstarttobegin.org. I also write for a game site, GameWire, GAMEMOIR. I'm pretty busy writing all around the internet.
Well, I mean, you got to keep yourself busy sometimes. Writing's it's an art that's comes better with time and practice.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so. I hope I'm getting better.
Are you on the Twitters at all?
Way too many. Let's see. You can find my main
one
Twitter
that they
site.
can definitely find you at.
Well, that's a good question. Just give me one moment so I can. I have so many Twitter accounts. I'm like, okay, which one do I have? Okay, the one that's easiest to find me is just I'm at press start the number 2 then BGN. It's press start begin or press start number 2 BGN. That's the easiest way to find me.
All right, good, because they probably will. I know we do a lot of our traffic through Twitter, and it's easy that way.
Yeah, agreed.
Again, that was a good talk. Nintendo, please don't die. Thanks for coming by,
Yeah.
Mike.
All right, take care.
That was us. That's a Ramlet.